The laughter rose behind her, loose, careless, echoing across sun-bleached concrete like pebbles skittering across stone. "Easy," one of the soldiers said, deliberately loud. "She's just the driver." A few others laughed, shaking their heads as heat shimmered above the parked vehicles. Dust clung to her boots while she crossed the yard. Engines rumbling nearby, radios spitting fragments of half-heard chatter. She sensed the stares before she ever met them. The smirks, the shrugs, the unspoken agreement that she didn't belong. She caught every word, every joke, every quiet dismissal. She didn't turn around. A superior motioned her through without making eye contact. Already speaking over her, already deciding she wasn't worth the pause. Somewhere overhead, a helicopter thudded steadily through the sky. She tightened her grip on the keys, slowed her breathing, kept her expression calm and unreadable. They thought she was invisible. They had no idea how dangerous that assumption was about to become. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories so you never miss these true accounts of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Her name was Elena Marquez. She was 28 years old, enlisted, and officially classified as a specialist in the Logistics Corps. On paper, her role sounded straightforward: transport driver, supply runner, evacuation operator when required. She was stationed at a forward operating base carved into a stretch of desert most maps barely bothered to label. To everyone else, that title meant one thing: not combat, not command, not someone worth remembering. Just the person who moved supplies and stayed out of the way? Elena had requested driving. Not because she lacked ability, but because she understood exactly what the job demanded. Long hours, narrow roads, poor visibility, split-second decisions with lives riding behind you and no room to turn back. Most assumed she'd ended up there because she'd failed somewhere else, that she'd washed out of something harder and settled for the easy role. She heard the whispers, noticed the looks, never corrected them. She was smaller than most, dark hair usually tied low and tucked into her collar. No sharp edges. No commanding presence. No loud confidence. If you passed her in a corridor, you probably wouldn't remember her. That invisibility had followed her most of her life. Elena spoke softly when she spoke at all. She listened more than she answered. She watched how people stood when they were nervous, how voices shifted when lies crept in. She didn't interrupt. She absorbed. Before every drive, she followed the same routine. She adjusted the rearview mirror not to check herself, but to map what lay beyond her sight. She tapped the dashboard twice, slow and intentional. Rolled her shoulders once, loosening tension that never fully left. Her gloves rested in the same spot on the console every time, fingers aligned. Her keys never jingled. She hated unnecessary noise. When she drove, she didn't hum or sing like others. She counted distance, turns, landmarks, shadows. Roads settled into her memory without effort. She tracked how long it took the sun to slide across certain ridges. People mistook her silence for fear. In briefings, she was talked over. During roll call, her name was sometimes skipped, then added as an afterthought. No one introduced her when new units rotated in. She stood behind louder voices, waiting for instructions that rarely came. Once, a lieutenant asked her to fetch coffee during a planning session. She did. When she returned, her seat was gone. Another time, someone asked if she even knew how to change a tire under pressure. She answered by doing it in under a minute. No one apologized. Elena didn't push back. She'd learned long ago that arguing with assumptions rarely changed them. She'd grown up in a town of narrow, unmarked roads, where her mother ran supply routes through mountain passes to reach villages others ignored. As a child, Elena rode shotgun, watching her mother scan terrain like a living map. Roads became a language to her. Later, when she enlisted, she trained in things she never talked about. Learned navigation the hard way. Learned what panic did to people. Learned how quickly chaos swallowed plans. She chose logistics not because it was easy, but because it was vital. Battles weren't fought with weapons alone. They were fought with timing, with movement, with who arrived where and when. Every life behind her wheel mattered. As she crossed the yard, she clocked exits without seeming to. Noted which gates creaked and which stayed silent. Counted seconds through choke points. Watched shadows not from paranoia, but because shadows told stories. Once, a soldier asked why she stared at roads like they were alive. She didn't answer. In the evenings, while others joked or complained, she sat alone with a notebook, sketching routes from memory. No names, no labels, just curves, slopes, junctions, instinct. She'd been called forgettable once to her face. She didn't argue, but she never forgot. When people laughed at her job, she fixed her gaze on the horizon. When she was waved away, she tightened her grip on the wheel and slowed her breathing. When they forgot her name, she answered anyway. Not all strength announces itself. Some of it waits. Standing beside her assigned vehicle, checking tires and listening to the engine, Alina looked calm, relaxed, steady. No one noticed how her eyes scanned the terrain, measuring distance, counting exits. No one asked why she already knew the fastest way out. They thought the road was ordinary. She knew better. The first time she was assigned the outer route, the briefing room reacted like someone had told a joke without a punchline. Smirks surfaced. Someone leaned back and whistled low. That road? A corporal muttered. That's not a route, that's a punishment. The lieutenant tapped the map, listing fuel, rations, medical crates, a pickup at a listening post, quiet for days. His gaze slid past Alina. Marquez is driving, he said flatly, already moving on. A few heads turned. One soldier raised his eyebrows, amused and offended all at once. Another didn't bother looking up. Sergeant Brock Hensley did. Tall, loud, sunburned, the kind of man who filled every space without asking. He looked at Alina like she was an inconvenience. Driver girl's taking the scenic route, he said, grinning. Hope you packed snacks. Laughter rippled through the room, casual, careless, the kind that bruised without leaving marks. Alina kept her hands folded, eyes forward. She didn't flinch. Private First Class Mason Reed stared at the map, then the floor. He didn't laugh. He didn't defend her. He simply stayed invisible. Specialist Jonah Park watched quietly from the back. When the joke landed, his mouth tightened. Not approval, not anger. Something uncertain. He glanced at Alina a second longer than necessary, like he was trying to understand what everyone else had decided so quickly. When the briefing ended, clusters formed. A few shoulders bumped hers on the way out, just enough to remind her she'd been noticed and dismissed. Outside, heat pressed down. Engines idled. Dust swirled. The base felt restless. Alina headed toward her vehicle as voices followed. Hey Marquez, Brock called, dragging out her name. You know how to drive with a convoy behind you, or are we drawing you lines? Laughter followed. Curious eyes waited for her reaction. She kept walking. Climbed into the driver's seat with deliberate calm. Adjusted the mirror. Tapped the dashboard twice. Set her gloves in place. Brock leaned into the open door, close enough for sweat and dust to carry. Don't slow us down, he said. Not a joke. A warning. She met his eyes briefly, then looked past him to the road beyond the gate. Strap in, she said evenly. And keep your radio clear. His grin faltered just a heartbeat, then widened. Hear that? He called. She's got a voice. The convoy rolled out, tires grinding over packed dirt. The road stretched wide and empty, safe enough to feel wrong. The outer route was considered boring. That's why no one wanted it. Boring made people careless. Alina drove steady. Not fast, not slow. Behind her, a gunner scanned ridgelines with bored eyes. Brock joked too loudly over the radio. Laughter rose, faded, returned neverlasting. At the first checkpoint, new infantry rotated in. Alina stepped out to coordinate supplies. Who's in charge? The squad leader asked, eyes sliding past her to Brock. Brock didn't correct him. I'm driving lead, Alina said calmly. We're here for medical crates and water. The leader blinked, surprised, then turned back to Brock anyway. Small humiliations stacked quietly. On the return, loose gravel caught the third vehicle. Tires skidded. Dust exploded. The driver overcorrected, heart racing. The ditch loomed. Alina saw it first. Her hands moved without panic. She eased left, opened space, keyed the radio. Third vehicle ease off. Straighten. Don't fight it. Let it settle. Breathe. The convoy rolled on. Silence followed. Then Brock's voice, light and forced. Look at that. Driver girl saved your paint job. The laughter returned, but it sounded different now. Later, the road split. Left wound around a ridge. Right cut through a shallow wash. The map marked both usable. The right was faster. The right was wrong. Alina slowed. Brock snapped over the radio. Why are we crawling? Take the right. The sand told a story. Tire marks. Recent, not wind. She turned left. Marquez? Brock barked. Jonah's voice came hesitant. Sergeant. Maybe she saw something. Brock laughed sharp. She saw what? Alina didn't explain. She didn't need to. At the listening post, the sergeant glanced at the route choice. Left was smart, he said quietly. We saw movement in the wash this morning. Brock froze. Alina said nothing. On the way out, the engine coughed. Metal ground. Tension spiked. Alina popped the hood. The belt was fraying. She fixed it calmly, efficiently. Since when do drivers fix engines? Brock asked, masking curiosity with mockery. Since engines don't care about titles, she replied. The convoy moved again here changed. Not respect. Something closer to discomfort. As the sun dipped, Alina spotted movement, a headlong movement. The gunner's voice tightened. The convoy slowed. Alina eased left without explanation. Jonah noticed. So did the gunner. Brock didn't. Later, Jonah asked quietly about a signal she'd made. She brushed it off. He noticed a worn scrap stitched inside her jacket. She closed it smoothly. Scrap, she said. The road forked again. Brock pointed right. That's faster. Lena didn't look at him. She took the left without hesitation. Jonah checked his watch again. Right on time. When they passed the broken antenna tower, he checked once more. Still perfect. Lena hadn't glanced at a clock even once. At the next pause, the men dismounted to stretch their legs. One of the newer soldiers joked that the outer route was pointless. Alina crouched by her tire, brushing sand from the tread. Her sleeve slid back just enough to reveal a thin, pale scar along her forearm. Not a training mark, not an accident. The kind of scar that carried a history, Jonah noticed. He didn't ask. Brock saw the shift in attention and misunderstood it. What? He barked. Now you're all staring at her like she's psychic? A few laughs followed, weaker than before. Unsure, Alina stood and tugged her sleeve down. As they climbed back into their vehicles, she murmured something too quiet for the radio, but Jonah heard it. Too quiet. What? He asked. She shook her head. Nothing. The road narrowed, terrain pressing in on both sides. Alina slowed just slightly. Brock sighed loudly into his mic. You do this on purpose? She didn't respond. Her eyes followed the rocks, the shadows, shape that didn't belong. Her hand rose to fingers, then a closed fist. The gunner shifted. Jonah swallowed. They cleared the pass, but the tension didn't ease. It thickened, like air before a storm. At an abandoned checkpoint, a senior corporal approached with paperwork, glanced at Alina, then at the log. You're early? She shrugged. Kept a steady pace. He studied her. Where'd you learn convoy timing like that? Picked it up? He frowned and walked away. The whispers began not jokes now, but questions. Quiet, private murmurs from soldiers trying to connect dots. Brock noticed and didn't like it. You got a fan club now? Said. What's next, Secret Special Forces? A few men laughed. No one backed him up. Alina was focused ahead. A stretch of road lay untouched. Too untouched. No tracks. No movement. No wind pattern. She slowed. Her hand rose again, different signal. The gunner stiffened. Jonah's pulse quickened. What is it? He asked softly. She didn't answer. She rolled her window down and listened. Not with her ears, but with instinct. Something was wrong. She pulled a folded map from her jacket told, hand-marked not standard issue. She scanned it, then the horizon, then the mirror-com face. Slow breathing, calculations already running. She keyed the mic. Stopped. Not yet. Brock was still talking. Someone laughed. Alina eased onto the brake, adjusted her mirror, touched the dashboard twice. For the first time in years, she whispered aloud. Not again. Ahead the road shimmered. Alina was already preparing for what the others still couldn't see. The first attack didn't announce itself with sound, but with silence. The radio cut mid-sentence. Voices swallowed by static, and nothing. No chatter, no background noise. Just an empty hiss. Alina felt it before she understood it. Her foot eased off the accelerator. Her gaze swept the road, the ridge, the mirror. Hold, she said, no response. Convoy, hold position. Still nothing. Brock leaned out, annoyed. What now? You bored again? Alina ignored him, her hand lifted, forming a signal no one on this base had been taught. The second gunner hesitated, then mirrored it instinctively. Jonah leaned closer to the man beside him. Do you know what that means? The man shook his head. The road ahead dipped, then curved, blocking sightlines. Rocks clustered on both sides like teeth. Not dramatic, not obvious, just wrong. Alina keyed the mic again. Radio blackout protocol. Switch to hand signals. No lights, no noise. Men stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Brock laughed sharply. You don't issue protocols? This isn't a movie. Alina didn't look at him. She angled the lead vehicle off-center. What are you doing? Brock snapped. Breaking formation. Spacing, she replied calmly. Then the ground erupted. Not a shot of detonation. Dust and rock blasted into the air where the road had been seconds earlier. The fourth vehicle lurched, but it survived, because it wasn't where it should have been. Alina had moved them. Screams, engines, chaos, move. Alina's voice cut through it all. Don't stop. Don't cluster. Follow me. The radio was dead. Brock was yelling. Someone was crying. Alina drove off the road straight into rough terrain. Are you insane? Brock shouted. She drove harder. Another explosion thundered behind them. She signaled a gurgent, this time. The convoy spread out, breaking the pattern. Brock stared at her. What the hell is happening? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. A muzzle flash flickered from the ridge. The shot hit where her vehicle would have been. They were being hunted. Alina drove like the land was a language she spoke, fluently angles, slopes, blind spots. She cut speed suddenly. Stop. They froze. A thin wire glinted between rocks. It's barely visible. They'd almost driven straight into it. She rerouted. Another blast detonated behind them. Jonah made a sound halfway to a scream. Who are you? Asterisk. She didn't hear him. She was already moving again. She positioned the vehicles using terrain like a chessboard. Drew fire, vanished behind ridges, reappeared elsewhere. Geometry, control, precision, shots cracked, frustrated and wild, then dashed nothing. No explosions, no gunfire, wind, engines idling. They had slipped through. Alina brought them onto a forgotten secondary path and stopped. Hands up. Silence. Brock climbed out, shaking. What was that? She stayed seated, an ambush that failed. How did you know? Jonah asked. She looked at him, then away. I listened. The radio crackled to life. This is Raven Actual. Identify. Alina answered. Logistics convoy, outer route, diverted due to hostile contact. Pause. Who rerouted you? Alina Marquez, specialist driver. Another pause. Different tone now. Spell that. She did. Silence. Is your middle initial R?
Is.
Longer pause. Call sign ghost line. The words landed hard. You were listed Mia from Kandahar? Forward route extraction driver. Alina closed her eyes briefly. Yes, sir. You just executed maneuvers taught to one unit only, the voice said. You saved an entire convoy. Alina pressed the mic. Did my job. When she stepped down. Nothing about her had changed, but everything else had. Voices softened. Movements sharpened. When she raised her hand, they waited not because she ordered it, but because they trusted her. Brock finally stepped forward. I was wrong. 3 words. Enough. Later, an older sergeant saluted her quiet, sincere. Others followed. Alina nodded once and signaled to move. By the time they reached safety, reports were filed, engines checked, radios restored. Alina parked where she always did, adjusted her mirror, rolled her shoulders, reached for her gloves. She redirected praise, returned to her role. That night, she sat alone. Sketching routes in a notebook, Jonah placed a bottle of water beside her and walked on. She kept drawing, because tomorrow there would be another road, another set of lives behind her wheel, and she would treat it the same way she always had. Quietly, carefully, precisely. Some of the strongest people in the world are the ones no one thinks to thank. And the most dangerous mistake is assuming they're invisible.